Let's now continue with this. So while we have been dealing with huge governance problems here at home, in our region of the world, there are major problems around violent insurgencies. 2,900 of our soldiers are now in the DRC as part of the SANDF intervention force there. Meanwhile, in Mozambique, the insurgency around Cabo Delgado appears to be gathering momentum. So then, how should countries be working together to stop this kind of violence, and what equipment will we need in order to do this? Daniel du Plessis is Marketing and Communications Director at Milkor, a company that makes and exports military equipment. Daniel, thank you so much for your time and for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's an absolute pleasure. So, Daniel, let's begin with talking about the emerging threats nationally and regionally. What threats do groups like ISIS pose, especially in regions like Cabo Delgado?
We are seeing quite an influx of military insurgencies, groups that have extremist agendas and that are pushing certain narratives and combating various different things. I think specifically the two that you mentioned in DRC and Mozambique are the two biggest ones confronted in our region in southern Africa, but there are many more across the continent that we are quite familiar with that have been ongoing for the past 10 and more years. So those threats typically pose a threat to the economic growth of a specific country, as well as foreign investment and tourism and things like that as well. So it has to be dealt with.
Of course. And should South Africa be wary of such threats?
I think South Africa should be quite wary. I think the fact that SANDF has deployed 2,900 members to DRC showcases the government's principles in supporting the peacekeeping efforts in the specific region, specifically in SADC. And I think the involvement in Mozambique, according to the SANDF mission as well, was also an incentive to show that our country is taking the regional conflicts quite seriously, as they should.
I mean, of course, you mentioned that it's very crucial for all these countries to be playing a role internationally and regionally, and to have that cooperation in ensuring that there's political stability. Do we have the weaponry and the might to be able to interject some of these insurgencies?
Yeah, so if you take the example of SADC, in the SADC community, for example, it combines of a few different countries across the Southern African hemisphere, and it not just boils down to South African Defence Force capabilities, but the region as a whole. I think the personnel are extremely well trained, and the doctrine is really sound in terms of combating these operations. I do believe, however, that there is a significant requirement for an upgrade in military capabilities, specifically in equipment. I think the equipment that we are using within the SANDF is relatively outdated, and there's a real need to modernize our entire force.
Speaking of that outdated equipment, I mean, with the current SADC mission that's happening in the DRC, SANDF was criticized in saying we don't have enough equipment, be it in the aerospace, be it also on the ground, and this is really posing a risk to the soldiers that have been sent there. With regards to MilCore in your company, are some of those equipments being supplied to the SANDF, and how would that assist, especially in a mission such as the DRC?
So Milkor has supplied to the SANDF over the past 40 years, 4 decades of our existence. And we've supplied them numerous defense equipment to the SANDF for various different domestic and international operations. However, just boiling down to the point, I'm not sure if those systems are being used in the DRC. I can't really comment on that with certainty. I do believe, however, that they would be quite effective in conducting the operations they have to have. I also have read about the different flashbacks or criticism that the SANDF has faced for the deployment in the DRC, and I agree to some degree that soldiers should be well equipped to combat and conduct the operations successfully. I do also believe that the SANDF has the right doctrines in place, and I think that the mandate will be fulfilled.
Let's speak about some of that equipment. I mean, Milkor, you specialize in aerospace and defense, of course, and the latest achievement is the development in the Milkor 380, which is the latest UAV. Explain to us what a UAV is and how it works. So
an unmanned aerial vehicle of this class. South Africa has been quite known for using UAV technologies over the last few years. This one specifically is the largest one ever to be produced on the African continent. It is fully manufactured, developed and tested in South Africa by South Africans. So it's a huge feat, not just for us as a company, but also for the country and the defense industry as a whole. This UAV specifically is designed and developed to deal with search and intelligence gathering operations, so surveillance and reconnaissance operations, to gather as much intel from the air as possible for the longest period possible, and then provide that information back to your troops on the ground to make informed decisions. This UAV specifically has an endurance of 35 hours, which makes it much more effective when doing search and surveillance operations. And it also has the capability to carry weapon systems if it needs to perform those kind of operations as well.
So such equipment, if used in a mission such as the DRC, could have averted deaths like that we saw with the 2 soldiers that died a few weeks ago.
I think could have prevented is a very difficult term to put a coin on it, but it does give you a strategic advantage when having real-time information about the movements of the enemies that you are facing, and it can therefore allow to a rapid response to whatever your insurgencies are operating against. So it's very difficult to say if it would have prevented those things, and it is very tragic. But I do believe, however, that the UAV, such as the Milkor 380, could play a vital role in ensuring that you have real-time information in conducting these operations as well.
You speak that MilCore has been in collaboration with the SANDF for the last 4 decades. How important is it for private sector and for government institutions to be able to come together in ensuring that SANDF is equipped in a way that it needs to be equipped for missions such as that in the DRC? I
think it is a vital thing, and I think it's something that the whole industry as a whole is leaning towards, working closely with government entities or government enterprises, and working together to equipping the SANDF to its best capabilities in conducting regional peacekeeping operations. I think one thing that the general public might not be familiar with is that these operations and insurgencies are at our doorstep. And the SANDF's role in playing and participating in those peacekeeping operations ensure that we can have a peaceful life here in South Africa. So their role is vital, and they need to be well equipped. I think the combination of a private sector and public sector partnerships are being well thought out, and I think that it is something that could play a vital role in upgrading and modernizing the SANDF's capabilities.
And when we keep talking about these insurgencies, I mean, at the moment we know that the world is in a constant geopolitical crisis with new conflicts emerging all over the time. What key regions and alliances do you believe do you see developing, and what could be some of the potential flashpoints that could impact the regional stability?
I think Africa as a whole has a lot of instability. There's a lot of regional conflicts, minor things at the moment. There's also been quite a few coup attempts across the continent as a whole. So Africa has a specific niche requirements when it comes to flashpoints, as you mentioned, that could spark into a regional combat or war operation. We've seen across the globe that there are multiple areas that have sparked that as well. I think alerts are on all high for the last 2 or 3 years. And I think the reality of war is not wished upon any country for that matter. So having a defense force that is capable of dealing with your domestic or regional capabilities is a vital asset for any government.
And how would South Africa or just the SADC region fare with regards to its abilities of its defense force when compared to bigger defense forces across the globe?
SADC's defense capabilities and the defense capabilities spread throughout the different countries that are participating are quite strong. And I think the force and the troops that have been well trained are being sent in these specific operations. These operations are very niche, very specific and very specialized, and therefore they are handled with quite a lot of sensitivity. What we read in the media are just the major spillover points, but I think for a large degree the SADC's operations in the whole region has actually been quite effective, and I think it is something commendable.
Most certainly. Daniel, thank you so much for your time. We certainly do hope we'll be seeing more of the UAV, especially amongst our SADC Defense Force. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks, Kleko.